Or okay, so we're back at chapter 9 of Tanya. The text can be found on our website, jewisharcadia.com/7888. That's a triple eight over there. And we were talking about how the two kings try to dominate over the body, and they each do not want the other one to have any dominion over the body whatsoever. The two kings being the Yetzer Tov, the Yetzer Hara, the godly soul and the animal soul or the ego. Um, and basically, they don't believe in a two-state solution for the body. That is, um, they're not into the okay, you can have half the body, I'll take the other half, but rather they each want the entirety of the body to be under its control. Um, and that's the name of the game. They're each trying to take full, unequivocal control over the entire body. It's, as the saying goes, unconditional surrender, right? So we already spoke last week how in general they each want to dominate over the whole thing, and now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain um, how the godly soul wishes to dominate the body. Now, obviously, it parallels each other, but he begins with uh, with crystallizing to us what exactly the godly soul dominating the body might look like. He says, the godly soul, its will and desire is that it should be the only one that rules over it and conducts it. And all the limbs should be um, subservient to its commands. Um, so just as with the analogy of a king ruling over a city or any territory, part of being a king is that everyone listens to the king. Similarly, when we're talking about the godly soul dominating the body, we mean that the godly soul wants that every limb of the body should obey the king, should obey the godly soul, and fulfill all the wills and desires of the godly soul without any exception. Um, Now, since all the impacts, um, since all the activity of the limbs of the body are done through the vivifying soul, right? Because we said what keeps the body alive is this egotistical type of soul, the animalistic soul. Um, so really, what's happening is when the godly soul dominates the body, it's not just dominating the body; it's really dominating the animal soul, which vivifies the body. Um,
Hmm.
and basically, the animal soul is now completely surrendering to the godly soul and saying, "Okay, you want me to move the finger in this direction? I'll move it in this direction. You want it to be moved in the other direction? I'll do that. Whatever you say, boss. Whatever you say, godly soul." And that's what the animal soul, which is the hands-on, so to speak, controller of the body, that's what it does. It does exactly what the godly soul wants. And the Alter Rebbe continues, and all these limbs are totally nullified to the godly soul. Um, um, in other words, it's just like with a city. It's not enough that the inhabitants of the city or the jurisdiction obey the king in practice. But really, what the king wants is he wants loyal servants, right? He wants people who he doesn't have to look over his shoulder and see, are they really still with me or not? And similarly, when the godly soul seeks to dominate the body, it doesn't just want that the body should obey it in practice, but really, under its breath, saying, "Oh my gosh, what a tyrant! I don't want to listen to this guy ever." But instead, the entirety of the body, from head to toe, should be totally subservient and totally committed and dedicated um, to willingly obey the ruling of the king being the godly soul over the body. And furthermore, umerkava eleha, that the that the limbs of the body should be a chariot to the godly soul. Now, what's this emphasis of being a chariot? So when we talk about a chariot, which is being led by horses, a chariot doesn't have a will of its own. I'm sorry. Oh. The chariot follows only and exclusively that which the rider tells it to go. Now, similarly speaking, the godly soul desires that the entire and the entire structure of the body should be completely subservient to the godly soul in a way that it's like automatically subservient. In other words, not that it wants to do one thing, but it's, reluctantly doing something else, but it should be moving automatically along with the will of the rider, so to speak. So, in other words, the default state of our body is when our body is functioning in a healthy way, the animal soul, the ego, the vivifying soul has a will or desire, and the body automatically does that. I want to turn my head because I'm curious. My ego, my self-preserving, my instincts say, I want to look over my left shoulder. Immediately, my head looks there. There's no gap between the will to do something and actually doing it, right? So the subservience that the limbs of the body have normally to the animal soul is a very it's a chariot-like subservience in the sense that it has no will of its own. Unlike, say, for example, if you have a slave, even a slave or a servant who's very dedicated and committed to its master, still has a will of its own, but it has to train itself to obey and appreciate and want to do the will of its master. But what the godly soul seeks to accomplish within the body is that the body really feels no will of its own, but it automatically works in sync with the godly soul. So, for example, the moment the godly soul feels a desire to, say, give charity, immediately the heart feels that desire as well, and the hand goes ahead and gives the charity without any pause or delay whatsoever. Because the heart and the hand and everything of the body is there as a chariot just to do what the rider wants, what the king, so to speak, wants. So just like a chariot, the moment the horses start moving, the chariot starts moving too. You need to give the horses a kick to get them moving, but it's not like you have to knock on the chariot door and say, okay, it's time to roll. They just start rolling with the horses as long as they're attached to the horses. Similarly, what the godly soul seeks to accomplish within the body is that the body works exactly like that. The moment the godly soul feels inspired to do something, the body automatically works in sync, without any gap, without any delay whatsoever. Now, the Rebbe continues, and the limbs of the body should serve as garments for the 10 powers of the soul, and the 3 garments of the soul, the 10 powers meaning 3 of intellect, 7 of emotions, and the 3 garments being thought, speech, and deed. That all of these powers, all of these garments, and everything about the godly soul should be invested in and enclosed in the limbs of the body. So, the effect of the vivifying soul normally in the body is in such a way that, besides for the fact that the body is totally subservient to the soul and it's ready to serve it, and whatever the animal soul tells the body to do, it grabs it. They are also like it's like the body is, it's like the soul is wearing the body. In other words, every one of the powers of the soul is dressed into, it's invested in the limb that's appropriate for it. So, for example, the power of intellect is in the mind. The power of vision is invested in the eye. The power of speech in the mouth, etc. And this type of synchronization is even greater um, than the synchronization between a wagon and its rider. Because at the end of the day, even though the wagon or the chariot has no will of its own, it still is its own entity. It's its own thing separate from the rider, but it follows the rider. So similarly, when the limbs of the body nullify themselves to the godly soul, at the end of the day, the will of the neshama, the will of the godly soul, and the limbs of the body still remain two separate things, but the body submits itself to the soul. However, when the limbs of the body become a garment for the powers of the soul within them, that's invested in them, now suddenly the soul becomes totally unified with the body, that you can't separate them at all. Just like you can't separate the power of vision with the actual tool of the eye, right? Because what is an eye? If I asked you what's an eye, you'll say, well, it's a membrane. No, it's not a membrane. It's it's a it's a tool of vision, right? That is the identity of the eye, right? So there's no separation between the membrane of the eye or the flesh of the eye to the actual power of vision, because the whole identity of the eye is seeing. And so that's what the godly soul is trying to accomplish. That the body should be the tool of its powers. That only the godly soul's powers, the godly vision, the godly intellect, the godly emotions, the godly speech should be what's invested in these garments, so to speak, which is the body. And then the Alter Rebbe says, the entire body should be filled with them alone. Meaning each one of the 248 limbs of the body should be a garment to its appropriate power, so that the whole body should be filled with only the powers of the godly soul. So this is what I was saying earlier, that there can't be a two-state solution, so to speak. Can't say, we'll get the godly soul will get some of the limbs of the body, I'll think Jewish, but I won't act Jewish, or I'll act Jewish, but I won't think Jewish. No, the godly soul's objective is to get the entire body from head to toe to completely subservient and working for the godly soul. And no foreigner should enter in there, God forbid. So not only should the animal soul's powers not have control in a steady way, but the animal soul's powers shouldn't even pass through the limbs of the body, even in a temporary way. Now, it's important to clarify that the lofty levels that we're talking about here, I mean, lots of this is very inattainable. To say that a person should be totally disassociated with anything evil, anything egotistical, anything animalistic whatsoever, this is something that very few human beings can accomplish such a feat. However, this desire on the part of the godly soul exists. That's what our godly soul wants. We're not saying like, okay, now Shalom, Joe, everybody, get in line and make sure your godly soul takes full dominance of the body. And if you can't do that, you're failing as a Jew. No, that's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that there's two kings over here battling over the same real estate. And we're taking one king at a time and describing what it desires to do. And so to understand the godly soul's perspective, we have to understand that the godly soul is a piece of God. And therefore, as far as it's concerned, it could do that. It could take over the whole body. Now, practically speaking, it comes into a body and it interacts with the animal soul, and there's some opposition, right? It's not so easy to make everything about the body in sync with the godly soul. Um, However, the desire doesn't go away. The desire of the godly soul to have complete control and dominion over the body and to be completely invested in the body and all of that, that never goes away. And that's something that to the last breath, the godly soul will always want to do that. And so that's that, as we continue, we'll see what it means to fill the body, what that looks like, about the emotions and the intellect, how that all works. But now we understand what exactly is pulling the godly soul in its direction. It's a very, very, complete and uncompromising desire that the godly soul has. And surely, as we'll see later, the animal soul wants the exact opposite. And that's why we're all a little schizophrenic, if you know what I'm saying. We have or bipolar. We have these two polar opposites. We have the godly soul pulling us one way, and the animal soul pulling us completely the other way, and they're diametrically opposed to one another, and that's what makes our lives interesting. So that's it for today, and Mitzvah Hashem, we'll see you next week.